Baptiste has been on a downward trajectory for the last few months, being the third worst support hero by pick rates. Even renowned coaches like Christopher were talking about Baptiste's downfall. Do keep in mind that just a year ago, many EU and NA teams were playing Baptiste. So what happens? For many months since 2022, the general consensus around Baptiste was that he's a decent support hero. Strong and versatile in the right hands, especially in ranked environments, but dive heroes would almost always overshadow him. The overwhelming majority of teams throughout 2023 played Brig Ana as their backline because they synergized well with and against dive. Of course, London were basically the only team that could play Baptiste to a high level, thanks to how bloody good London is. Even better, they beat one of the best dive teams, the Atlanta Reign, in the 2023 playoffs. And guess what Landon was playing the entire time? However, after the league ended, Baptiste got 3 micro nerfs. Firstly, one to his regen burst, decreasing the instant burst heal by 10 points and the heal over time by 10 points as well. Keep in mind, this also affects how Baptiste gets double the burst healing when under half HP, so that number goes from 100 down to 80. Then, the month after, his lamp gets nerfed by 2 seconds and the HP gets reduced by 25. And lastly, his magazine size gets lowered from 45 bullets to 36. Now, despite all these micro nerfs, Baptiste was still seeing play. In fact, towards the end of 2023, during flash ops, it was commonplace for Baptiste players to land one-shots with their window. Let's not also forget the World Cup 2, where Baptiste could be played in a completely different style with Iliari. But this is where we get into the biggest Baptiste nerf of them all, the Season 9 HP buffs. Basically, in Season 9, the devs inflated the HP of all the heroes in the game relative to how much HP they previously had. Most heroes that weren't tanks gained an extra 50 HP, and this was pivotal in changing the breakpoints of Baptiste's window. In a recent video featuring professional coach Christopher, who also pioneered the Ryan Lucio Bap comps in 2022, he describes just how massive the HP changes were to Baptiste.
Bap's window went from being actually a pretty good ult to a pretty shit one. Before Season 9, if we windowed, we could get Mir right clicks one shot, we could get Sim right clicks one shot, we could get Fire Strikes one shot. We had the opportunity to use this window to pick squishies across the map. All of those HP breakpoints are changed, so now window just looks like the worst ult in the game, where it's really, really difficult to get value. This is why I think we struggled a lot last season playing Bap, and it's why I think that teams that continue to play Bap struggle as well. It's because you just find yourself consistently one ult down.
Now, here's where I have to disagree with Chris a bit. Not that he's wrong, but that he's overstating how much of a nerf this was to Baptiste. Because after Season 9, teams still played him, including his own team. Yes, there was competition to Kiriko, but nothing crazy. In fact, there was a whole debate about whether to play Bap or Sojin Kiri. Bap having more consistent damage and sustain, whereas Sojin Kiri having more burst damage and more range. The only change Baptiste had was one more additional nerf, which lowered the minimum HP threshold for Lamp by 5%. Still though, while Lucio Kiri and even Moira were mostly played in Stage 1, Lucio Bap comps were the mainstay in Stage 2. Then, the Esports World Cup came around, but I want to skip past that due to the hero bans. What I can't skip past though is the DPS Passive. It was first introduced in Season 9, having its number changed between 25 and 15. If we combine that with the regen burst nerf, Baptiste could originally do up to 150 healing. Now, with the worst version of the DPS passive, that number plummets down to 90. 60 initial burst healing, then 30 healing over 4 seconds. With the softer, 15% DPS passive, that number goes down to 102. If we factor in the HP pools too, the original regen burst could fill 75% of Bap's HP. Now, depending on how bad that DPS passive is, that number goes to either 36% or 41%. Despite all this though, the real secret Baptiste killer came in Season 12. Now, when Juno first entered the game, what most people paid attention to was just how broken she was when paired with D.Va. So much so that the standard Baptiste poke comps on Circle Royale were instead replaced with Juno Ana D.Va.
So if you're just playing like a Bap, Ilari or Sigma type thing, the D.Va will just go flying past, your Bap, Ilari will put under serious pressure, especially on nano timings.
Now, this was because of a bug with D.Va's boosters, but even when that was fixed, Juno was still being played in the Malga Brig comp. She could essentially do it Overall, she had a better ultimate than Baptiste, the utility of speed boost, higher healing per second, and while she had less sustain than Baptiste, Brig solved that issue. In other words, if you wanted to play Bap Lucio, you would have worse ultimates on the whole, numerically less healing, less support for your DPS players, and less mobility. But of course, we did eventually see Lucio Kiriko take back over. The release of Hazard made it very hard to play Brig because, in a call I had with Timeless head coach Capitology, Brig is not very good into hazards. Lucio Kiriko are also way more slippery against the hazard and offer way more ranged pressure. So if Brig Juno isn't being played, why isn't Baptiste replacing Kiriko in the Lucio Kiricomps? Well, two main things. Firstly, Brig Juno is still being played, just not as much. With hero bans coming into place, a Lucio or Kiriko ban opens up the support line way more and lowers the amount of mirrors that we constantly see. Not to mention, according to some coaches, teams are just way too confident playing that Lucio Kiriko mirror, so that might also be a reason as to why we're seeing so much of it. Secondly, Kiriko can live in the mid-fight way more than Baptiste can. That might seem odd considering Baptiste is supposed to be the sustain hero, right? Well, it gets more complicated. Full credit goes to Capitology for this one, but in the current meta, the best Kirikos are able to live through the mid-fight by having their Lucios or the hitscan player set a TP for their Kiriko. Usually it's the Lucio or Sojourn in most comps, but this allows Kiriko to not just teleport to a tank in the mid-fight and get blown up. If we look at how Brig Juno lives in the mid-fight, they just stand their grounds. Juno's got a tiny, annoying hitbox, extremely high single target healing, and Brig is the best defensive support character in the game. Now, if we look at Baptiste, how the hell does he compete? His regen burst, which is on a 15-second cooldown by the way, only does 102 healing with that DPS passive. You might say, well, why don't teams play Brig and Bap together? But then you don't have any speed boost, and you also have a terrible ultimate compared to Orbital Ray. Unless there's hero bans, there's just no reason to play Baptiste. Now, I do want to briefly cover why Ana is being played over Baptiste as well, but this should be fairly obvious. She's pretty much only played in dive comps alongside Brigitte because she can way more easily heal mobile characters, and Nano Boost is actually an ultimate. I haven't really talked about Immortality Field yet, but it's really not as broken of an ability that people think. Your comp and the enemy comp need to be fairly immobile for it to have any long-lasting effects. It's just not enough of a reason to pick Baptiste right now. I would also talk about Moira, but I've already got my separate video on her, so you can check that out too. So what are the solutions? Now, I do kinda have to address the elephant in the room, being that for most players, Baptiste isn't that bad. You check Plat and Diamond, and Baptiste is sitting around the middle of the pack in terms of pick rates. You can also check most content creator tier lists, and they'll put this guy in A or B tier. Weirdly enough, Emong says that Baptiste has been getting buffed, which is just unequivocally not true.
Bap is getting buffed like crazy.
Anyways, the point being is that buffing Baptiste at the top level without affecting low level play is pretty difficult to do. However, that's where I'll mention some compensation nerfs. For now, the two big questions that need answering is how can Baptiste live in the mid-fight, and how can we increase the value of Bap's matrix? The second question should be fairly easy to answer. Just increase the amplification from 2 times to 2.25 times. Hopefully people don't freak out about this in the comments, but this should bring back the Fire Strike and Railgun one-shots. Now, I know people aren't fans of one-shots, I mean, I'm not either, but for an ultimate, I think it's fine. It's the same way that people freaked out about Brig getting a stun in Rally, but for an ultimate, it's fine. You can even compensate this buff by increasing the matrix cost by 5 to 10%. Now, how can we make Baptiste actually live in the mid-fights? Well, if we compare Baptiste to other supports, Kiriko can TP, Lucio can wall ride, and Brig, Juno, and Ana can stand their grounds. And honestly, Baptiste needs to be in there too. The easiest way to do that is just by buffing Regen Burst. The issue with that though is that Regen Burst is super annoying to play against. A massive issue and annoyance during that double shield meta was that whenever you played a flanker like Tracer, it felt almost impossible to do anything to Baptiste. It's not really fair that you could mechanically land a great clip, then just by pressing one button, Baptiste undoes all the hard work you just did. Let's not go back to that. The second answer is to kill the DPS passive, but let's be real, the devs aren't gonna do that. My solution to this would be giving Baptiste an armor health pool. Now that might sound crazy and I wouldn't want to make an unkillable brickbat backline, but I think it would actually be a good start to helping Baptiste live against more flanker heroes. Regardless, if Baptiste were to receive a sustain buff, it would likely have to come at the cost of damage or mobility. Damage in terms of nerfing his gun's fire rates, or mobility in terms of nerfing his exo boots. Anyways, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed, do be sure to let me know down below, and check out my coaching if you want to climb. Until next time.